Okay, so we're diving into Bitcoin, but like you asked for, not the usual stuff. We're going deeper, like way deeper. This is about the geopolitical earthquake this thing could set off.
Yeah.
We're talking reshaping how global power works, and honestly, even I'm a little shook by some of the stuff you sent over.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the weeds, like what's the price doing today? Is it going up or down? But the bigger picture, that's where stuff gets really wild.
Totally. One article, The Geopolitics of Bitcoin. That's the one that really got me thinking. Like, it mentions Bitcoin mining using more electricity than some whole countries. That's got to mean something bigger, right?
It does. What we're seeing with Bitcoin, it's like a total shakeup of how we think about controlling money, like economic power. The article uses this term economic sovereignty, basically meaning a country's control over its own financial, destiny. Bitcoin kind of throws that whole idea out the window.
Okay, break that down for me. How does a digital currency, even one as big as Bitcoin, mess with something as huge as, national sovereignty?
So picture this. What if financial power wasn't just in a few big capitals, but spread out more? Globally, that's the kind of potential Bitcoin has, and it's making some governments kind of nervous.
I can see why. It's like this tech lets people just bypass all the traditional financial gatekeepers, and the article brought up Venezuela even.
Yeah.
But I got to admit, I'm a little lost on the how. People aren't using Bitcoin to buy groceries there, right?
Good point. And that's where it gets real. While the article mentioned Venezuela, it didn't go too deep on specifics. We know their regular money is basically worthless because of hyperinflation. So people are turning to Bitcoin to protect what they have and to be part of the global economy in ways they couldn't before.
So if it can be that lifeline, why aren't more countries jumping on board? The article mentioned something called CBDCs as a counter movement. Is that what's stopping them?
Yes, central bank digital currencies. That's the powers that be, trying to create their own version of this whole digital money thing. Basically, it's digital dollars, digital euros, whatever. But the government still runs the show.
So it's a tug of war then. You got Bitcoin, all about decentralization, doing your own thing. Then you've got governments clinging to control with these CBDCs. Where does that leave everyone else stuck in the middle?
That's the million-dollar question. The article doesn't make predictions, but it does point out the tension. It's a huge clash of ideologies playing out globally. One side, you've got the believers in totally free and open finance. The other side, it's all about control and regulation.
Like we're watching a whole new financial world order being born,
Yeah.
but no one knows who's going to come out on top.
Exactly. And like any major power shift, there'll be winners and losers. The article mentions potential consequences, new financial centers popping up, changes in international aid, how money moves around the world. But it's still early days.
Speaking of consequences, one thing that jumped out was the article talking about El Salvador. They were the first to make Bitcoin official, legal tender. Seemed like a bold move, maybe even reckless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, bold for sure. The article pointed out that for El Salvador, it wasn't just about the tech. It was this statement, declaring their economic independence.
Like they were saying, hey, world, we're not waiting for permission anymore. Pioneers of the digital age or something. But was it the right call? The article wasn't really sure.
Million-dollar question, right? It's still too soon to tell what'll happen long-term with El Salvador. But gotta give it to them. They made everyone pay attention. Other countries are watching them close, trying to learn from it all.
Totally. It's like we're all holding our breath. Are they going to crash and burn or pull it off and become this example of what's possible?
Exactly. That uncertainty, it's what makes this whole thing so interesting. But let's zoom out a sec. El Salvador's one thing, but there's something else the article talked about that might be even bigger in the long run.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The tech itself. Beyond just Bitcoin, it's the underlying tech blockchain that's the real game changer. The article talked about how some countries are already trying to become blockchain leaders. They see it as key to staying competitive in this digital age.
So it's like a new kind of arms race.
Yeah.
But instead of stockpiling weapons, it's all about code and algorithms. Tanks and missiles are out, blockchain is in.
You got it. And it's not just money and economics either. This tech spills over into everything. Cybersecurity, data privacy, how we even govern ourselves online.
Okay, now that's getting a little scary. Are we talking digital dictatorships?
Yeah.
Cyber warfare?
Well, hold your horses. It's not that dramatic. At least not yet. But it is a good reminder, right? Every new tech has its downsides, its challenges.
A double-edged sword. On one hand, you've got folks in Venezuela using Bitcoin to escape a bad situation. But then it could be used for bad stuff too,
Hmm.
right? Money laundering, getting around sanctions, things that could really destabilize stuff. And now you're saying the tech itself could cause a whole new geopolitical mess.
You're getting it. And that's exactly why we got to talk about this stuff, think about the complexities, because what Bitcoin, blockchain, all of it represents, it's the future being written right now. And it's up to us to decide what that future is going to look like.
That's a heavy thought.
Okay.
But if we ignore the doomsday stuff for a second, what about the good? What's the optimistic take?
Okay, imagine this. Imagine a world where access to the global economy isn't about where you're born or what money you use. It's about, do you have an internet connection? Do you have a smartphone? That's it.
Wow. So much of the world is cut off from the global economy just because of where they live. And Bitcoin could change that.
It could. And think about remittances. You know, sending money back home to family in other countries. Right now, it's slow, it's expensive, and someone's always taking a cut. Bitcoin, it could make those transactions instant, practically free.
Cutting out the middleman. Seems to be a theme here with Bitcoin.
It is. That's a big part of why it's so disruptive. But let's bring it back to the listener for a sec. What does this all mean for them?
Yeah, good point. What's the takeaway here? So where do we even go from here? This is like trying to imagine the internet, but back when we were all on dial-up, how are we supposed to wrap our heads around something this big?
Yeah, no, it's true. We're in the early days. But that's also what makes it so, I don't know, exciting, right? As this tech gets better, as more people figure it out, countries, businesses, everyday folks, we're going to see it change things in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
It's kind of both cool and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
You know? What's someone who's not like an expert supposed to do with all this?
Yeah.
Easy to just feel totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, I hear that. It's a lot. But that's why understanding even the basics, it's so huge. Knowledge is power, right? The more we get this whole Bitcoin and blockchain thing, the good and the bad, the better we can deal with what's coming, maybe even help shape it.
So for our listener out there, tuning in, trying to make sense of it all, what's the one thing you want them to take away from our little deep dive here?
Pay attention. Seriously. Stay curious. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even the uncomfortable ones. This world, Bitcoin, blockchain, it's changing constantly. The future's being written right now, and who knows, maybe you'll be one of the authors.
Love that. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep asking the big questions.